Hey everyone, welcome to the Podcast Interview Marketing Show, where we pull back the curtain on how to build your brand, expand your influence, and scale your business by being the featured guests on targeted podcast interviews. Today, we're diving into a powerful strategy that can double your visibility without doubling your work or your time or your budget. It's about having multiple voices on your podcast interview marketing tour. I'm joined today by our operations manager, Jessica Morgan, and we're talking about why having different voices, different talents like yours and your teams can open up new doors and make you unforgettable in front of your target audience. From a fresh perspective to building authority in different niches, you'll hear how this approach can unlock new opportunities, reduce your burnout, and even keep you top of mind with the large language models like ChatGPT, which index podcast interviews to fuel your authority and start referring new clients. So if you're ready to scale your impact, showcase your team's expertise, and really leverage the power of podcast interview in today's world, stay tuned. Let's jump in. Hey, we're pulling the curtain back today and explaining to you what we're doing, what clients have seen, and why it's so important to have multiple voices, multiple speakers on your podcast interview marketing tour. I'm joined today by our operations manager, Jessica Morgan. And Jessica, this is something we talk about internally a lot, but I don't know that we've publicly shared it with people before.
Exactly. It's a pleasure to be here and to get to talk about this because I think it is something that is so powerful to have multiple speakers, but it's not something that a lot of people think about. They kind of think of it as, well, it's going to double my budget. I need to increase the cost of, if I have multiple speakers, that's just going to kind of increase all of that. Where really that's not what we've seen. It doesn't double your cost. It doubles your visibility. It multiplies your reach. You're having more thought leadership out there. You're having more backlinks and searchability. It's really honestly one of the most cost-effective ways to increase that exposure and brand visibility is to have multiple speakers talking about your brand.
And you're talking about this from the operations standpoint. I'm going to put my hat on as the owner, as the one that used to be the only talent. And I'm looking at this as I got to, triple my impact, and it didn't take any more work on my time. So, I often tell people don't do more than one great podcast interview a week, right? Do better interviews, right? But there were so many different avenues that we weren't getting to. And I remember this is probably 9 months ago when we sat down with some of the key people here. And it's like, we need more voices out there. And so now, I'm still doing the one a week, but on average, they're pretty much doing 2 a month, right? So now instead of getting 4 interviews, a month, we're getting 12. And it's amazing because it's not like the same voice over and over and over. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is how it speaks to different buyers, right? I'm very good at speaking to business owners, right? People that look like me, think like me, but I am not the face or voice of something like our health and wellness pod.
Yes, I know you said that a few times. And so it is something that's really cool that we can go ahead and kind of we have people with individual talents and backgrounds that can speak to different niches. And so I know we have one of our speakers, she has an amazing background in PR. So her kind of thing is, what is the intersection of PR and podcast interview marketing, and kind of how does that blend together? Where if I were to go on talking about that, I don't have that background, so people, aren't going to listen to me on a PR podcast. And so that's been really cool to kind of watch her soar with PR side. We also have, like you mentioned, health and wellness. We have one of the leads in our health and wellness area. She is talking about, how to increase your brand as a health and wellness brand, or maybe your practice that you have and such. And she has that experience. And so, and then we have another one in our kind of business focus. She's talking to business leaders, but also with that mom focus. So she juggles all the hats and all the things. And so it's really cool to have her connect with kind of that female audience as well.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because we all come to it from a different background. We have different insights. And I remember listening to their podcast, right? Liz was talking about PR, and I'm like, wow, I never thought about podcast interview marketing from that lens, right? Chloe goes out on the health and wellness pods, and I'm like, I don't know that I would have been able to connect the dots, right? I'm not sure I know the difference between a keto and a calorie, but she was able to speak their language there. And then you've got Kristen, where people will ask her the specific questions, the tactics behind it. This is what she does every day with excellence, right? I'm at the strategy standpoint and I'm like, I don't know. I haven't done that in like 10 years since we really started the company. So it's great to have those different voices to speak to different buyers and different needs.
Absolutely. But it's also Kristen and Chloe and Liz, they all are strategic, campaign managers. So it's something where if somebody hears them on podcast, they could even be their campaign strategist too, which is kind of that adding that connection to it as well. And I also think there's been a couple podcasts where you've been a guest on it, and then all of a sudden Kristen was, and she was like, I don't want to follow Tom. But the thing is, you have that different voice and that different connection, and not everybody is going to connect with just you. Like it could be just, our affect, the way we're talking, just different things that are out of our control that maybe they connect with Kristen and they're like, you know what? I've heard about them twice now. Kristen really sold it to me, or Tom really sold it to me. And so that's also pretty cool that it's just kind of different, connecting in different ways. They might not connect with the host and then they connect with you, even though the host does the same thing as you. And so that's definitely something we found as well in the operation side.
Yeah. And it really gives you a second bite at the apple, right? Because so if we go on a podcast and it goes great, right? Well, that's great, but they're not going to invite me back for another year, right? They want different guests. But to have someone on from the same company talking about a different aspect of it, right? If it was a great podcast the first time, it'll be a great podcast the next time. So find different reasons to go back to get in front of that audience there.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. We've definitely seen that. A lot of success in that area.
Yeah. And, we focus on 3 verticals, right? Business, faith and spirituality, and health and nutrition and wellness, right? Those are our big 3 pillars. And there's different verticals and we could talk to different things. And I think it brings a lot of authority on different ones. I can think of like Dana Malstaff from Boss Mom podcast, right? She has never had a male guest on, right? And I always joked that someday I'll be her first one. Well, it's not going to happen, right? But we've got somebody else from the team that could go on and talk to that. And that whole thing of content is king, but context is God, right? Small G.
Absolutely. And it's also kind of showing if you have, maybe the sales leader, you have your COO possibly, or your chief of operations, or your marketing manager. If you have different people, it kind of builds that authority, as it isn't, they're hearing from different people from the same company, and it kind of just rounds that out and makes it not just a one person show. It just really is adding that authority, like you said.
And let's step back for a second, because we were intentional in who we asked if they wanted to go out there on podcasts, right? So different views there and different seniority levels there too, right? You don't want everybody from the newest intern going out and speaking for your brand, right? So how did you think about that, of who you wanted from the operations side being front facing?
I think a lot of it goes back to personality. kind of the vision of the future of the brand as well. People that are passionate, knowledgeable, and really can carry a conversation about what they're talking about. And so I always say I wasn't the best person to be on podcasts because I tend to ramble a little bit. Tom knows this. And so we've been working on that with being really focused and such. And so having Liz with a background in PR and such, she has also a background in music and such. Chloe has a background in radio. And so it's they have a lot of strengths that they're able to be very presentable. They know how to talk slowly, how to focus on a point. And that, I guess, from the technical side was something that was a huge asset. But then also, like I said, personality. So, and the passion behind it is all three of them are so passionate about what we do here, where they see us in the future, how we are evolving as a company, that it's just really made it absolutely incredible that they've been able to be on podcasts and share that, because personally, I think it exudes when they're on a podcast interview, just that passion and that excitement and the drive and how they are truly connecting with the audience of, we want to help you, and this is what we want to do. This is what we do. This is how we can help you. This is tips and tricks that you can implement now, has just really been fantastic.
Yeah. And it's, as a business owner, looking at, it's not just the Tom show, right? If it's just one personality, that is a very, very dangerous place. And you can look at other brands, Zig Ziglar, God rest his soul, right? Zig had a great organization, but there was no next step on there, right? And you can see Dave Ramsey and his organization has been struggling this for probably 15 years. How do they get more voices out there? Because what we see is we start to age out, right? I often say that, the people that listen to you are like you or want to be like you. So if I'm the only voice here, well, our audience is going to get to be older, more male. It's not going to be diverse, right? And that's not what we want, right? That's fine if you're a solopreneur, but if you're trying to build an organization, you have to do it that way. The other thing that I was looking at, and, there's other people that I want to bring into this in the team, but for those initial ones, they had to be excited for it, right? Our team is the best working. If I asked anyone on the team, please do interviews for me, they would do it, right? But they wouldn't enjoy it. And that's not where their strengths are. So I was looking at, do they want to do it? And then the other thing too is, this is the face of your brand, right? So make sure that when you put somebody out there, you feel comfortable with giving them the keys to the car, right? You can speak on behalf of this. And there was a lot of training that we did around that with things like tone of voice too.
Yeah. And to your point, what you said before about, having it just be your audience if you're speaking to, if you also only have one person, I think that you're really kind of edging up on fatigue, possibly bottlenecks, burnout, scheduling issues, all of that. And so, Tom, I think I've said this multiple times during our talks, but your calendar stresses me out. Like I don't know how you do all the things at all the time. And so fitting in podcast interviews and also being, the head salesperson, the chief evangelical or officer, that alone provides some scheduling chaos, right? And so having multiple people in there, you're not going to get burned out on doing podcast interviews because you can scale back if you're like, hey, when you did the Camino, I'm going to take some time off for a little bit. Well, we still have those voices out there, and we still have, we're not having, that decline at all, or the radioactive decay, as we say. It's more so that you're keeping that. It's very consistent. You're not getting burnt out, and we don't have that bottleneck of, hey, I've spoken on 5,000 podcasts. I'm tired. I'm done. And then all of a sudden, nobody hears from you again.
I love founder-led marketing, right? Because there's studies that show that the founder will always have 10 times the reach of the brand, right? If you look at, Elon Musk has got 10 times the following as as Tesla. Richard Branson has 10 times the personal following of, Virgin. So all of that. But if it's just one personality, like you said, that is very, very dangerous. They can't take time off. If your leads are coming from you being on podcast interviews, I couldn't have taken that 6 weeks off. And so it gives a lot of flexibility there too. And as an owner, right, we're trying to build the business, not build our ego. There's a reason that, my picture is not all over the website. It's not the Tom Show. This is a team working here. And I think if it's only one person talking there, there's this sense of, oh, it's a solopreneur, right? I remember being at a podcasting conference years ago, probably we were, 2 years in, and I mentioned something about the team, and they're like, oh, I thought it was just you in your basement. And I was like, well, first of all, where I live in Michigan, we don't have basements. And second of all, we've got this team. And so I think it makes the company look more reflective of who they are when we've got multiple speakers.
Oh, absolutely. You're like, it's not just me in my basement. It's me and 30 other people in their basements. We're all
right.
remotely. It also, and something that I think is the most exciting, is it creates that ecosystem, if you will, of referrals. So I know we talk about, LMO, AI, ChatGPT, all the things a lot. And having multiple speakers out there, because we know ChatGPT and all the large language models are looking for long form content. When they're, say somebody types in, I want to go on podcasts. We've had a lot of referrals that way because it's looking at long form content. We have a lot of people out there doing podcast interviews. And so that's one of the first things that come up is Interview Valet. And so that is something that I think is really, really exciting too, is that this is the future, is getting more people out there, has that ecosystem of referrals for, large language, models and such.
Yeah. And it's, we throw around LMO all the time. That's language machine optimization, right? What SEO was at Y2K, LMO is today. And they're always indexing the long form content, right? Last November, ChatGPT started to show their sources, right? It's Wikipedia, your website, Amazon, if you've got a book, and then it's long form content. So having multiple voices there, everybody is singing from the same hymnal, if you will, right? We're still telling the same message, the same point of view, but we're telling it in a slightly different way that always looks fresh. And it's interesting. The data is not out there, but I don't think anybody is like when we would just put in podcast interviews, right? That's the key word, right? No, when ChatGPT, they're doing like these long sentences and long paragraphs of what they're looking for. And it's not just keywords anymore. It's something about, podcast interviews for health and wellness and functional medicine doctors and all the rest of this. And the AI goes in there and goes, oh, that's what Chloe talked about. And here's all of the things right there. And here's some other things in there. So, it's an amazing time, and the podcast interviews are getting more and more powerful because it's not just our clients that are listening to it anymore. It's the AI that's going to become the referral source.
Exactly. And it's also when you have different people and different voices on there, there's different opportunities, different doors that open too. And so there may be, I know we talk a lot about networking with podcast hosts as well. And that's a huge benefit to going on podcasts, being a podcast guest, is being able, maybe they invite you to one of their summits, or there's a webinar they ask you to speak at, and connecting with that host in a way that maybe, like you mentioned on health and wellness podcast, maybe it's a way that you don't connect very well, whether you're not able to connect with the host, but Chloe's able to connect with that host. And then she gets invited to a panel or a summit. That just opens up that another door for referrals as well. And so I think it's just completely magnifies what podcast interviews can do.
And the value that is bringing us from the marketing standpoint is amazing, right? And also, I think the value in developing the team, because, especially as a small team, people are always looking for more opportunity. And as a business owner, I feel like I've got to continue to challenge people, continue to reward them, continue to help them grow. And by saying to them, yeah, I trust you to speak for the company, to be on these, I think has really taken the team to the next level. So it's not Tom centric, right? Don't have to ask me all the questions. People on the team are like, oh, I heard so-and-so talking about this. I'll ask them the question.
And it's definitely, I've seen a lot of growth in our team, and maybe people that aren't talking on podcast interviews now, but are very interested. They're asking, how do I get there? What's the next step that I need to do? How can I practice? How can I get to be that next person that is one of the voices of Interview Valet? And so it's definitely been a lot of a growth opportunity for a lot of our team members.
You think about that, you talk about the rainmaker. Wouldn't you love a company where everybody is the rainmaker? Everyone's out there going and evangelizing for our company, our category, our clients. That makes for a very, very powerful company. And one of the things I always talk about, right? Psychologically self-employed people work here. They do a good job because they take ownership in it. I want to touch about some of the risks here. And early on, we had to look at making sure that we're consistent, right? We're talking from the same hymnal, right? We've got the same point of view and everything. And we're a little bit different, right? So it's not everybody's in the same office. We're always talking the same way. We're all remote. We've been this way from the very beginning. So let's, once again, pull behind the curtain a little bit and say, what did we do to make sure that I don't want to say all sounded like Tom, but we all had the same tone of voice that's consistent with the brand?
I mean, I would say it goes back to kind of how we have trained and worked together since the beginning. I don't think there was a whole lot of necessarily molding that needed to be done with the three people we have out there, because they know what we're about. They know our mission statement. They know our goal and where the company, kind of what we want and where the company's going. And so making sure, I think it's something as a leader you can pick out, pretty easily, saying, okay, these people are the ones that are coming to us with ideas. They're always saying, hey, this is what I think we should do next. This is, hey, did you see AI is doing this? This is, what if Interview Valet did XYZ? And they are really wanting to be a part and care and about the future of the company. That honestly, Tom, I don't think it was that hard to make sure that it was going to be all consistent and all cohesive for our tone of voice, because they all just demonstrated very, very early on that they knew what we were about here. They knew our mission statement, and, they had a passion for it as well.
Yeah. And it's like, we've got brand guidelines and brand colors, right? And Tiffany Mink, our marketing manager, I call her our defender of the brand, right? She'll be the one that comes back and say, that's not our orange, right? So we know that this is the typeface we use. This is the color we use. These are the logos we use. But it's like, how do you say, this is what we sound like? And some of it was just being around that tribal knowledge. But I think going back when we went through a ton of my podcasts, right? And to try to figure out what that tone of voice is. And we do that for our clients too, so that people know that, no, we don't say podcast guesting, right? Podcast guesting is an activity. That's not what we do, right? We do podcast interview marketing, right? That we don't talk about downloads, right? Downloads is just a vanity metric. We talk about authority of a podcast. So trying to do that. And even, I think people know, but now we're using that tone of voice for AI, when we're using that, to create content, or even new people coming on, right? We encourage people, we invite them, right? we sound like Interview Valet. We do not sound like Grant Cardone trying to always be closing, right? Nothing against him. That's his brand. It's not our brand. So when anybody is on a podcast, right, you got to make sure that you're proud, they're consistent on brand. When somebody hears them, they're like, oh yeah, that sounds like an Interview Valet person.
Absolutely. And I don't want to say it wasn't hard to to decide who was going to be on it, but it's also, I think it's the culture that we've built here as well, is we have our Tomisms, things, we don't say pitching. You don't pitch a human, you pitch a baseball. We introduce humans. Like all of these little things that have been so since day one we had in our training, and all these people have been with the company for a while. They know this from, I still say, oh, well, I hope we can. And nope, hope is not a strategy. We believe. And so there's so many things that I think we all find ourselves saying, even in our day-to-day life of, nope, I believe that. So I don't hope, I believe. And so it is kind of ingrained. The Tomisms are ingrained in us, that it's the culture that you've built here, right? And so I think that's something that has been very beneficial. If you want to talk about a super practical thing that we did, though, it was those practice interviews with each person. Maybe they're a guest on the podcast interview marketing show, and okay, let's talk about this, and beforehand, let's just talk, let's riff off of it. And I will say, I'm sure each and every one of them would say the first couple interviews were a little nerve-wracking. And there's still been a couple of them that they're like, that was a horrible interview. I didn't like it, but please don't promote it. And then we listen to it and we're like, Kristen, Liz, you did great. And so it's still, they don't have the experience that you have yet, but with everyone, they're just getting more and more confident and just kind of have their stories in their back pocket, if you will, and are just really, really excited to be kind of furthering the message. So,
well, my only regret is that we didn't do it earlier, right? So many people, if they do founder-led marketing, they've got a one-cylinder marketing engine that works really well, right? And you can keep adding fuel to it and get it more and more. But now, when you can get a 4-cylinder engine, a 6-cylinder engine, that's what scales. And so I think that's very important, both from building a brand, building a company, getting known by AI out there, and, getting more opportunity. So I would say to someone, if you're doing podcast interviews, why don't you have more people in your team doing it, right? If it works for you, why wouldn't it work for them also? So that's sort of my call to action, if you will, or challenge there. What would you tell someone that has been doing podcast interviews? It works, and they've never thought about bringing their team on to do more.
I would say the same thing. I would say the first people that come to your mind of, oh, they'd be great at this, are the people that are going to be fantastic at it. And so I would, in your gut who is the future of your brand, who is the future voice of your company, or, right along with you. And so that little feeling in your gut, trust it, and start training and start nurturing and growing those people to be the future-proof your brand is what I would say.
I look at this is the discussions that we were having 9 months ago. We've shared our experience here, and I would encourage you, start to have these discussions with your team, right? It makes sense. And like I said, my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner, and we're going to continue to scale this, and get more, develop people more, and serve people for the betterment of all.
I love it. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Podcast Interview Marketing Show. We hope you're as inspired as we are about the power of multiple voices in your podcast interview marketing strategy. When you let your team share their expertise, you're not just amplifying your reach, you're building trust, authority, and deeper conversations with your ideal clients. So here's your action step. Look around at your team and identify who else can be part of this powerful conversation. Who has a voice that can speak to a niche that you're not already reaching? Who brings a different perspective that can resonate with your audience in new ways. Start having those conversations today, and you'll be surprised at how quickly you can turn that one-cylinder engine into a six-cylinder powerhouse that drives your business, drives your leads, drives your growth. Let's keep building your brand, one conversation at a time. Until next time, keep showing up. Share your message with the world. They need to hear it now more than ever.